Soon, we're gonna have to rename this channel, but I'm not gonna say more than that, because for now, let's focus on our current projects. First, let's continue with the new switch and gauges panels, where, in my pursuit for maximizing the board's real estate, I ended up blocking the steering wheel. So, sadly, we're gonna have to cut away a piece from the boards. Let's measure how much space we need, then make some marks, and then cut it with the circular saw. Next, I need to find a way to mount the old engine stop button, and I'm gonna use this 30mm hole saw drill. Luckily, we have some space between two of the gauges, and that's where I'm gonna put it. Then I need to cut some grooves, because part of the button is shaped like a screw nut. Next, I measure the diameter of the button's screw thread, 21mm, so I'm gonna use a 25mm hole saw drill. With this, I'm gonna cut a hole into a very thin metal plate, which I'm gonna use to hold the button in place inside the wooden board. Alright, this is looking good. So let's put that aside for now and start finishing up the wooden boards themselves. Such as here, where I drilled a hole in the wrong place. And at this point I would like to say that I'm not putting too much time and effort into finishing the boards at this moment, because I might cover them up with something really nice at some point in the future. So bear with me for now, as we are doing this as best we can with the given materials and circumstances. Here I got two 30 by 5mm aluminum bars, which I'm gonna use to cover up the front side of the panels. First, I cut them to size. Then I round off the edges. And then I drill the holes for the screws. Next, I use a countersink drill to make the screws flush with the surface of the aluminum. This is looking good. Let's put one screw in to see where we are at. This works for me. So let's make the same size of countersunk holes for all of the screw holes. Before I screw the bars to the wood, I drill some pilot holes into the wooden panel to prevent it from cracking. Now I can safely screw the aluminum bar to the wooden panel. Let's move on with the aluminum bar for the second half of the wooden panel. This time I'm using the angle grinder. Once again, I remove the sharp edges, drill the holes for the screws, countersink the holes, and finally I give the bars a polished finish using this very finely grained sanding sponge. Here is a quick before and after comparison. And now the bars are finished. And with that polished look, I find that they turned out pretty good. Now then, let's attach the aluminum bars to both of the wooden panels. So now I can put the panels in their right place, hopefully indefinitely. I'm gonna remove the steering wheel for easier access to the worksite. I make sure the switch panels are properly aligned before screwing them down. And after I put in place the second wooden board, I can check if I'm still able to open up the board with the switch panels on it. That doesn't seem to be a problem, so let's have a look at what we got so far. Next, I'm adding some rubber strips on the steel frame upon which the wooden boards rest on. And I'm just making a few dots with Sikaflex 552 because there's no need to overdo it with the adhesive. Now that everything's ready to be mounted, we can put in place the stop engine button and secure it with that little metal plate we cut earlier. Next, I'll put that in place and screw it down permanently. Now it's time to put in the gauges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4. Wait a minute. Ah, of course. So next, let's deal with that. First, I tried to file it away by hand. Yeah, screw that. It goes much quicker with the angle grinder. So let's try that one more time. First, the oil pressure gauge. Next, the oil temperature, the amp meter for the starter battery, the water pressure gauge for the engine coolant, and finally, the rev counter. Next, it's time to install the thrust control box. And this is pretty much what the switch and gauges panels will look like in their finished state. Of course, at this point, most things are not yet properly connected or wired, because that's material for upcoming videos, and there are several smaller aesthetic fixes I need to make, but from a visual point of view, this is pretty much what it's gonna be. The large space on the right of the control lever is perfect for placing a laptop computer, so that your co-pilot can check the maps and other useful information on the go. Our switch panel is small and compact, and it may look very basic, except maybe for that huge LCD display, but it has a few aces hidden up its sleeves, which I'm gonna show you in upcoming videos. Next, I'm going to install this plug, which sits at the base of the mast and provides power to the anchor and top lights. First, let's take it apart and have a look at what's inside. This rubber gasket determines the size and shape of the cable we pass through. It's most likely only going to work with a single round cable, and it has to have the exact diameter in order to be watertight. I annotated the connectors on both ends, so I don't get lost once they are installed. I will wire the plug part first. I make sure everything is at a suitable length. And I'm using crimped terminals at all the cable ends. Now I can put the cable terminals in their proper holes and screw everything tight. Let's put it back together. Yeah, looking good. Next, I have to determine the right length of the cable that goes to the top and anchor lights. Let's put this back up for now. Next, I'll take care of the old socket, and as it happens, I have just the right tool for this. I needed to make this hole bigger. I first tried with the hole saw, which of course didn't work since the drill bit wasn't able to keep it centered. I then used the hand file, which worked surprisingly well. Now that the hole is big enough, let's apply some rust converter. Next I need to drill new screw holes. Next I put down a few coats of primer. And then it's time to add the screws and the rubber gasket for the plug. I add a little Sikaflex 552 sealant to make sure it's absolutely watertight. Now we can put that in place and bolt it down. Next I have to wire the socket part. And here again I'm using proper crimped terminals. As you can see, I'm joining the two negative wires into a single one, simply because I'm forced to do it in this way for this particular installation, and if I could have avoided it, I would have. Now let's feed the cables through the roof. And then screw them down into the socket. And if you pay real close attention, you will notice that I actually wired them wrong. I put the positive cable into the negative socket, which resulted in one of the lights still working and the other one not, and it took me a good part of an afternoon to find out the issue. Anyway, this is now finished, so let's put it together. The last thing to do is to hide away the cable into the back of the mast. Now let's put up the mast one last time. And there you have it. we now have a fully functional mast with anchor light and top light, a totally safe and watertight connection, easy to service and troubleshoot. And I know that this may seem like just a small thing compared to many other things we did on this channel so far, but to me it feels like a huge accomplishment. Probably because I've been without a proper anchor light for such a long time. Alright, here is a quick and dirty one just for those who stayed until the end or who skipped ahead. You remember those tanks I showed you in the video when we brought home the platform? Well, my friend seemed to have a use for them, so I let him have them, under the condition that he would do the work himself. Which he did, in about 30 minutes or so. He then tied them up together. Attached the rope to his boat. Then he pushed them into the water and drove away. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you all for watching and see you in the next video.